What would you do if a billionaire stranger walked up to you at a fancy party and whispered 4 words that would change your life forever? Pretend to be my wife. This is the incredible story of a struggling waitress who had nothing, and a rich doctor who had everything except the one thing money can't buy. And before this story ends, you'll see how a fake marriage became the most real thing either of them ever experienced. If you love stories about second chances, unexpected love, and breaking all the rules, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The Grand Hotel ballroom sparkled like a jewelry store. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting rainbow lights across the marble floor. Everywhere you looked, there were rich people in expensive clothes, laughing and drinking champagne that cost more than most people's monthly rent. But Rachel Turner didn't belong here. She stood by herself near a huge flower arrangement, gripping her old worn-out purse like it was a life raft. Her dress came from a discount store, and she could feel every single person staring at her, judging her, wondering who let the poor girl into their exclusive party. Rachel was only here because the bride, Jessica, used to be her best friend back when they both grew up in the same small neighborhood. Jessica had married into serious money, and she insisted Rachel come to the wedding. But now, standing here alone, Rachel felt like she'd made a terrible mistake. Across that same ballroom, Dr. Daniel Hayes was trapped in his own kind of nightmare. His mother, Mrs. Catherine Hayes, wore a designer suit that probably cost more than a car. She was practically dragging him toward a tall blonde woman with an empty smile and a family fortune in the fashion industry. "She's perfect for you, Daniel," his mother hissed, keeping her voice low so others wouldn't hear. "Her family has money going back generations. It's time you settled down with someone from our world." Daniel's jaw clenched. Ever since his divorce 2 years ago, his mother had been on a mission to marry him off again. She treated him like a prize horse at an auction, and he was sick of it. He looked around the room, searching for any excuse to escape. That's when his eyes landed on her. A young woman standing alone, looking just as trapped as he felt. She had kind eyes and a natural beauty that stood out in a room full of fake smiles and too much makeup. But right now, those eyes were filled with embarrassment. Daniel watched as a drunk man in an expensive suit cornered her. "I don't believe we've met," the man slurred, looking Rachel up and down like she was something he could buy. "You must be with the catering staff. Go fetch me another drink, would you?" The insult echoed across the nearby crowd. Rachel's face turned bright red. Her hands shook as she gripped her purse tighter. She was about to run away, and Daniel could see her pride crumbling right in front of everyone. And just like that, an idea hit him. It was crazy, it was reckless, but it was perfect. He excused himself from his mother mid-sentence and walked across the ballroom with the confidence of a surgeon heading into an operating room. People moved out of his way automatically. He didn't stop until he was standing right next to Rachel. He completely ignored the drunk man. Instead, he leaned close to Rachel and whispered so only she could hear. "Pretend to be my wife." Rachel's eyes went wide. She stared at him in complete shock. This was Dr. Daniel Hayes, the billionaire brain surgeon she'd only seen in magazines and on TV. "What?" she whispered back. "Just play along," he said quietly, his eyes sparkling with something between mischief and desperation. "I promise I'll make it worth your time." Before she could say no, he took her hand. His grip was warm and firm and somehow made her feel safe. He turned to face his stunned mother and the approaching blonde woman, gently pulling Rachel to his side. "Mother," he said loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear, his voice smooth as silk. "I'd like you to finally meet my wife, Rachel. We've been keeping it a secret, but I guess there's no better time than now to tell everyone." You could hear people gasp. The drunk man who'd insulted Rachel stood there with his mouth hanging open like a fish. Daniel's mother looked like she'd been slapped. Her face went pale, then red, then pale again. Daniel smiled, a dazzling smile that belonged on a movie screen. He brought Rachel's hand up to his lips and kissed her knuckles, never taking his eyes off hers. "Sweetheart," he said softly, "I believe they're playing our song." And just like that, Rachel's entire world flipped upside down. Can you imagine being in Rachel's shoes right now? A complete stranger just called you his wife in front of hundreds of rich people. Would you play along or run away? Drop a comment and let me know what you do. And if you're enjoying this story, smash that like button because it gets so much better. For the rest of that night, Daniel and Rachel put on the performance of a lifetime. He never left her side. His hand stayed on the small of her back, a touch that felt protective and intimate and sent shivers down her spine. He whispered funny comments in her ear about the snobby guests, making her laugh a real, genuine laugh that surprised them both. They danced, and in his arms she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Safety, like she belonged somewhere, like she mattered. The chemistry between them was electric. Every time their eyes met, every time he smiled at her, every time his fingers brushed against hers, something sparked. They both felt it, this confusing, thrilling connection that shouldn't exist between two strangers pretending to be married. At the end of the night, he walked her to the hotel entrance, away from all the watching eyes. The fantasy was over. "You were pretty convincing," he said, his voice returning to that cool, professional tone doctors use, though his eyes still held some warmth from the evening. "You're not a bad actor yourself, doctor," Rachel replied, her heart still pounding in her chest. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a black business card. He handed it to her. "I'll contact you soon," he said simply. Then he turned and climbed into a waiting black car, leaving Rachel standing on the sidewalk. The cool night air hit her skin where his hands had been touching her all evening. She looked down at the business card, her mind spinning in circles. What just happened? The next week felt like waking up from a dream into a nightmare. Rachel went back to her real life, working double shifts at the diner where she waitressed. The smell of old grease and burnt coffee replaced the memory of champagne and Daniel's expensive cologne. Her mom got sicker. More terrifying hospital bills arrived in the mail, each one like a paper monster threatening to destroy what little they had left. Rachel was in the middle of the lunch rush, balancing a heavy tray of plates when the diner went completely silent. It was the same thing that happened at the wedding, that sudden quiet that meant someone important had just walked in. Dr. Daniel Hayes stood in the doorway, wearing a dark suit so perfectly tailored it looked like it was painted on. He looked completely out of place in the rundown diner, like a king who'd wandered into the wrong kingdom. His eyes scanned the room and locked onto her. He walked straight to the counter, his presence so powerful it felt like the air itself moved out of his way. "Miss Turner," he said, his voice calm and commanding, "we need to talk about business." He waited while Rachel handed her tray to a coworker who stared at him with her mouth hanging open. Then he led Rachel to a quiet corner booth. He didn't waste time on small talk. "I've looked into your situation," he began, his tone clinical and precise. "Your mother's heart failure, the debt from her previous hospital stays, your 2 jobs that still aren't enough to cover her medication costs." He laid out every painful detail of her life like he was reading a medical chart. Rachel felt shame burn through her chest, mixed with anger. He was picking apart her desperation like it was a science experiment. "I'm proposing a deal," he continued, his gray eyes intense. "A 1-year contract. You'll act as my wife in public. You'll attend business dinners and social events. You'll maintain the illusion we created at the wedding." He paused, letting his next words sink in. "In return, I'll pay off every single one of your family's debts immediately. All the medical bills, everything. Gone." Rachel's breath caught in her throat. "You can't be serious." "I'm very serious," he said. "I'll also provide you with a monthly allowance, a place to live, and anything else you need. When the year ends, we'll quietly divorce, and you'll walk away with enough money to start fresh." "Why?" Rachel whispered. "Why would you do this?" "My mother won't stop trying to marry me off to women I don't love," Daniel said bluntly. "A wife, even a fake one, solves that problem. You need money. I need freedom. It's a simple business transaction." "For a whole year?" Rachel asked, her mind racing. 365 days, he confirmed. He slid a thick contract across the table. "Everything is spelled out in here, including one very important clause." He pointed to a section near the end of the contract. "Read section 12 carefully," he said. Rachel's eyes scanned the legal language until she found it. Then she read it again because she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "Emotional attachment termination clause," she read out loud. "Both parties agree that under no circumstances will either party develop genuine romantic feelings for the other. If emotional attachment occurs, the contract is immediately void and all financial agreements are canceled." She looked up at him. "You're saying if either of us falls in love, I lose everything?" "Exactly," Daniel said, his expression unreadable. "This is business, Miss Turner, not romance. Can you agree to those terms?" Rachel thought about her mother lying in a hospital bed, about the pills they couldn't afford, about working herself to exhaustion and still drowning in debt. She thought about 1 year of pretending compared to a lifetime of struggling. "Where do I sign?" she said quietly. Daniel pulled out an expensive pen and handed it to her. Rachel signed her name at the bottom of the contract, and everything changed. Before we continue, I want to give a huge shout out to everyone watching from around the world. Whether you're in New York, London, Toronto, or anywhere else, thank you for being here. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and you might get featured in the next video. Now let's see how Rachel's new life begins. Daniel's penthouse apartment was like nothing Rachel had ever seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. The furniture looked like it belonged in a museum. Everything was sleek, modern, and expensive. It felt more like a fancy hotel than a home. "Your room is down this hallway," Daniel said, giving her a quick tour. "Mine is on the opposite side of the apartment. We'll maintain separate spaces, professional distance." He showed her a bedroom that was bigger than her entire apartment back home. It had its own bathroom with a tub the size of a small pool and a walk-in closet that was completely empty. "A stylist will come tomorrow to fill your closet with appropriate clothing," Daniel explained. "You'll need to look the part for public appearances." "Appropriate clothing," Rachel repeated. "Designer dresses, shoes, jewelry, everything you'll need to be Mrs. Daniel Hayes in public." The way he said it made Rachel's stomach twist. This was really happening. Over the next few weeks, Rachel's life transformed completely. A team of people descended on the penthouse. Stylists filled her closet with clothes that cost more than she used to make in a year. A woman named Patricia taught her which fork to use at fancy dinners and how to make small talk with billionaires. Another woman coached her on how to walk in high heels without falling on her face. It was exhausting. Every day felt like studying for an exam she couldn't afford to fail. But the hardest part wasn't learning how to be rich. The hardest part was Daniel himself. When they were alone in the apartment, he was cold and distant. He worked long hours at the hospital and came home late. When he was home, he barely spoke to her. He treated her like a business associate, nothing more. But when they went out in public, everything changed. At business dinners, he transformed into the perfect husband. His hand would find hers under the table. He'd lean close and whisper in her ear, making it look intimate even though he was just asking if she wanted dessert. He'd look at her with fake affection that seemed so real, it made her heart race. And then they'd come home, and the mask would drop. He'd say goodnight and disappear into his side of the apartment, leaving her alone and confused. Rachel hated how good he was at pretending, but what she hated even more was how much she looked forward to those moments when he pretended to love her. The first month passed like a blur. Then came their first major test. Daniel's mother was hosting a charity gala at her mansion, and they had to attend as the perfect couple. Mrs. Hayes had barely spoken to Daniel since the wedding announcement. This was her chance to inspect Rachel up close. "Just follow my lead," Daniel said as they pulled up to his mother's enormous house. "Smile, be polite, don't let her rattle you." "Easy for you to say," Rachel muttered. "She's not your fake mother-in-law." The corner of Daniel's mouth twitched. Was that almost a smile? The gala was even more intimidating than the wedding. Mrs. Hayes watched Rachel like a hawk watching a mouse. She asked pointed questions about Rachel's family, her education, her background. Each question felt like a small knife. But Rachel held her own. She answered honestly about growing up without much money, about working hard, about taking care of her mother. She didn't try to pretend to be something she wasn't. And something strange happened. By the end of the evening, Mrs. Hayes's icy expression had thawed slightly. When they were leaving, she actually took Rachel's hand. "You're not what I expected," the older woman said quietly, "but perhaps that's not entirely a bad thing." In the car ride home, Daniel was quiet. "You did well tonight," he finally said. "Your mother terrifies me," Rachel admitted. "She terrifies everyone," Daniel replied. Then he added, "But she liked you, that's rare." For just a moment, sitting in the dark car, Rachel saw something in Daniel's expression. Something that wasn't cold or professional. Something almost like warmth. Then it was gone. They arrived back at the penthouse, said their polite goodnights, and retreated to their separate worlds. But Rachel lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the man on the other side of the apartment. The man she was married to but couldn't love. The man whose fake touches made her feel more alive than anything real ever had. This was going to be a very long year. 3 months into their arrangement, cracks started appearing in their careful walls. It started small. Rachel woke up one morning to find Daniel in the kitchen, attempting to make coffee and failing miserably. He usually left for the hospital before she woke up, so seeing him there in casual clothes, looking frustrated and almost human, caught her off guard. "The machine is broken," he said, scowling at the expensive coffee maker like it had personally offended him. Rachel laughed. She couldn't help it. This brilliant surgeon who operated on people's brains couldn't figure out a coffee maker. "Let me," she said, walking over. She fixed the settings he'd gotten wrong and hit start. Perfect coffee began brewing. Daniel stared at the machine, then at her. "How did you do that?" "I was a waitress, remember. I've made about 1,000,000 cups of coffee." For the first time since she'd met him, Daniel really smiled. Not the fake public smile. A real one that reached his eyes and made him look years younger. "Thank you," he said softly. "You're welcome," Rachel replied, feeling her heart do something dangerous. That small moment opened a door. After that morning, things started changing. Daniel started coming home earlier. They'd eat dinner together sometimes, not because they had to, but because neither of them wanted to eat alone. They'd talk about their days, not deep conversations, but real ones, normal ones. Rachel learned that Daniel had wanted to be a musician before his father forced him into medicine. He'd played piano as a kid, but gave it up to meet his family's expectations. Daniel learned that Rachel had wanted to study art in college but couldn't afford it. She still drew in secret, filling sketchbooks with drawings she never showed anyone. One evening, Daniel came home and found Rachel curled up on the couch, crying. Her mother had called. The treatment was working, but recovery would take longer than expected. Rachel felt guilty for not being there. Daniel sat down beside her without a word. Then he did something that broke all their rules. He put his arm around her and let her cry into his shoulder. "Your mother is getting the best care possible," he said quietly. "And that's because of you, because of this deal we made. You're doing the right thing." "It doesn't feel right," Rachel whispered. "This whole thing is a lie." "Maybe," Daniel said, "but the money helping your mother is real. The treatment she's getting is real. Focus on that." Rachel looked up at him, and their faces were suddenly very close. She could see gold flecks in his gray eyes she'd never noticed before, could feel his breath on her skin, could see him looking at her mouth. For a heartbeat, she thought he might kiss her. Then Daniel pulled away abruptly, standing up like the couch had caught fire. "I have charts to review," he said quickly, his voice cold again. He disappeared into his office, leaving Rachel alone with her racing heart. That night marked a turning point. After that, they were both more careful, more distant, because they'd felt it. That pull, that dangerous attraction that the contract specifically forbade. But being careful didn't stop it from growing. "I bet you can feel the tension building, right? These two are fighting so hard against something that's inevitable. If you're loving this story so far, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part, because things are about to get even more complicated." 6 months into their contract, Rachel and Daniel were invited to a medical conference in California. "It's 3 days," Daniel explained. "Multiple events with colleagues and donors. We'll need to share a hotel suite to maintain appearances, but it will have separate bedrooms." Rachel's stomach flipped. 3 days pretending to be married while staying in the same suite. This was going to be torture. The conference was at a beautiful resort. Their suite was enormous, with 2 bedrooms connected by a shared living area. It was luxurious and intimate in a way that made Rachel nervous. The first night there was a formal dinner. Rachel wore a stunning emerald dress the stylist had picked out. When she emerged from her room, Daniel froze mid-step. He stared at her for a long moment before clearing his throat. "You look beautiful," he said, and something in his voice made it sound less like a compliment and more like an accusation. At dinner, they played their roles perfectly. But Rachel noticed Daniel's hand lingering on hers a little longer than necessary. Noticed him watching her when he thought she wasn't looking. Noticed the tension in his jaw every time another man spoke to her. After dinner, there was dancing. Daniel pulled her onto the floor, and they moved together like they'd been dancing for years instead of months. "You're getting better at this," Rachel said softly, looking up at him. "I have a good partner," Daniel replied. The music was slow and romantic. His hand on her waist felt like it was burning through the fabric of her dress. They were so close she could feel his heartbeat. "Daniel," she whispered, not even sure what she wanted to say. His eyes met hers, and what she saw there made her breath catch. He wasn't pretending anymore. That look was real. The song ended. Daniel stepped back quickly, breaking the spell. "We should go back to the suite," he said, his voice rough. "Early morning tomorrow." They walked back in silence, the tension between them so thick you could cut it with a knife. Inside the suite, Rachel headed toward her bedroom, but Daniel's voice stopped her. "Rachel, wait." She turned. He was standing in the middle of the living room, running his hand through his hair, looking frustrated and conflicted. "This isn't working," he said. Rachel's heart dropped. "What do you mean?" "I mean this, us pretending," he gestured between them. "I thought I could do this for a year, keep it professional, keep distance, but I can't." "What are you saying?" Rachel asked, even though part of her knew, part of her had known for months. Daniel crossed the space between them. He stopped just inches away, close enough that she could see the war happening in his eyes. "I'm saying that contract has a clause about emotional attachment," he said, his voice low and intense. "And I'm violating it. Every single day I'm violating it." Rachel's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Daniel." Tell me you don't feel it too, he said, his eyes searching hers desperately. Tell me I'm imagining this and I'll walk away. We'll finish the contract. We'll never speak of it again. Rachel knew what she should say. She should lie. She should protect herself, protect the money her mother needed, protect both of them from the consequences. But she was so tired of lying. I can't tell you that, she whispered. Because I feel it too. I've been feeling it for months. The relief and agony on Daniel's face were equally powerful. We can't do this. The contract. I know, Rachel said, tears forming in her eyes. I know what the contract says. They stood there, inches apart, both of them trapped by rules they'd agreed to. Rules designed to protect them but now felt like prison bars. I should go to my room, Rachel finally said, even though every part of her was screaming to stay. Yeah, Daniel agreed, not moving. Neither of them moved. And then, as if pulled by a force stronger than logic or contracts or consequences, they closed the distance between them. Daniel's hands came up to cup her face, his touch gentle and reverent. Rachel's hands gripped his shirt, pulling him closer. They looked at each other for one last moment, both knowing this would change everything. Then he kissed her. It wasn't the practiced, performed kiss they'd shared in public. This was real, deep, desperate, full of 6 months of denied feelings and suppressed attraction, full of everything they'd been holding back. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, reality crashed back in. Oh no, Rachel whispered. We just broke the contract. I'm going to lose everything. Daniel's arms tightened around her. You're not losing anything. I won't let that happen. But the clause. Forget the clause, Daniel said firmly. We'll figure it out. I don't care about the contract anymore. I care about you. Those words hung in the air between them, terrifying and wonderful. They'd crossed the line. There was no going back now. The next morning felt like a dream and a nightmare at the same time. Rachel woke up in her own bed, but everything had changed. She and Daniel had spent hours talking last night after that kiss, about their feelings, about the impossible situation, about what to do next. They decided to finish the conference, go home, and figure things out there. But both of them knew the contract was now broken. The question was what came next. At breakfast, Daniel's colleague Dr. Richard Chen joined them. He was an older man who'd mentored Daniel years ago. You two seem happy, Dr. Chen observed, smiling. It's good to see, Daniel. After your divorce, I worried you'd never open up again. Rachel and Daniel exchanged glances. If only Dr. Chen knew the truth. The rest of the conference passed in a blur. They went through the motions, attending sessions and dinners, but both of them were distracted. The kiss had opened something that couldn't be closed again. On their last night, Daniel knocked on Rachel's bedroom door. Can we talk? He asked. They sat on the couch in the shared living area. Daniel took her hand, studying it like he was seeing it for the first time. I've been thinking, he said slowly, about the contract, about us, about what's real and what's been pretend. Me too, Rachel admitted. The truth is, I don't think any of it has been pretend, not for me. Maybe it started that way, but somewhere along the line it became real. He looked at her, his gray eyes intense. You became real to me. Rachel felt tears sting her eyes. You became real to me too. But Daniel, we signed a contract. I need that money for my mother, if we break the emotional attachment clause. Then I'll pay it anyway, Daniel said firmly. I'll tear up the contract and write you a check for everything I promised plus more. Your mother will get her treatment. You'll get your fresh start. None of that changes. But why would you do that? Rachel asked. If the contract is broken. Daniel reached up and touched her face gently. Because this stopped being about the contract months ago. Because I care about you. Because I want you to stay, not because you have to, but because you want to. I do want to stay, Rachel whispered. But I'm scared. What if this is just because we've been playing house for 6 months? What if when we stop pretending, there's nothing real left? There's only one way to find out, Daniel said. We stop pretending, we tear up the contract. We start over for real this time. Rachel looked at the man who'd been her fake husband for half a year. The man who'd saved her mother's life. The man she'd somehow fallen completely in love with despite every rule they'd made. Okay, she said, let's start over. Daniel smiled, that real smile that made him look like a completely different person than the cold surgeon she'd first met. Hi, he said, extending his hand formally. I'm Daniel Hayes, I'm a neurosurgeon. I'm terrible at making coffee, and I'm completely in love with you. Rachel laughed through her tears and shook his hand. Hi, I'm Rachel Turner. I'm a waitress and an artist, and I'm completely in love with you too. Would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow night? Daniel asked. A real date, no contract, no performance, just us. I'd love that, Rachel said. And then he kissed her again, and this time there was no guilt, no fear, no contract hanging over them. Just two people who'd found something real in the middle of something fake. They returned home from California on a cloud, but reality hit fast. The next morning, Daniel's lawyer, Mr. Thomas Burton, called for an emergency meeting. Mrs. Hayes has requested a formal review of your marriage, the lawyer explained grimly. She's hired investigators. Daniel's mother had never fully accepted Rachel, and apparently she'd been digging. The investigators had found inconsistencies, different addresses before the wedding, no engagement announcement, no dating history. The evidence was piling up. She's threatening to expose the marriage as a fraud, Mr. Burton continued. If she succeeds, there could be legal consequences, fraud charges, investigations into your financial arrangements. Rachel felt sick. What do we do? Daniel's jaw was set, his eyes hard. We tell the truth. Daniel, no, Rachel protested. If they find out about the contract. Then they find out, Daniel said firmly. He looked at his lawyer. Set up a meeting with my mother tomorrow. It's time we had an honest conversation. The next day, they sat in Mrs. Catherine Hayes's imposing study. The older woman looked at them with cold triumph in her eyes. I knew something was wrong from the beginning, she said. You two barely knew each other before that wedding announcement. Now I have proof. This marriage is a sham. You're right, Daniel said calmly. It started as one. His mother's eyes widened slightly. She hadn't expected him to admit it. I hired Rachel to pose as my wife, Daniel continued, his voice steady. I made her sign a contract. I paid her to attend events, to deal with your matchmaking, to be the perfect wife in public. Mrs. Hayes's face turned red. You did what? Do you have any idea the scandal this could cause? I don't care about scandal anymore, Daniel said, because somewhere along the way something changed. The pretend became real. I fell in love with her, mother, really in love, for the first time in my life. He took Rachel's hand, squeezing it tight. So yes, our marriage started as a lie, Daniel said. But it's not a lie anymore. I'm planning to marry Rachel again, properly this time, because I want to spend my life with her. And if you can't accept that, then I guess we'll have a scandal. The room fell silent. Mrs. Hayes stared at her son like she was seeing him for the first time. You're serious, she finally said, her voice softer. Completely, Daniel replied. Mrs. Hayes turned to Rachel. And you, what do you have to say for yourself? Rachel had been quiet, letting Daniel speak, but now she met the older woman's eyes directly. I was desperate when I agreed to this, Rachel said honestly. My mother was dying and I couldn't save her. Daniel offered me a way out and I took it. It was wrong and I knew it was wrong, but I did it anyway. She paused, gathering courage. But Daniel is right, something changed. I didn't mean to fall in love with him, I tried not to, but he's the kindest, most brilliant, most complicated person I've ever met. And yes, I love him, really love him, not his money, Not this penthouse. Him. Mrs. Hayes studied them both for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, her expression softened. "You remind me of myself," she said to Rachel quietly. "When I married Daniel's father, my family had nothing. His family was wealthy like ours is now. Everyone said I was a gold digger who didn't belong." This was a shock. Daniel stared at his mother. "What?" "I never told you because I was ashamed," Mrs. Hayes admitted. "I spent years trying to fit in, trying to prove I deserved to be part of this world. Maybe that's why I've been so hard on Daniel's choices. I was afraid history would repeat itself." She sighed, looking suddenly older and more human. "But your father and I learned to love each other," she continued. "Our marriage started with his family's expectations, but it became real. If you two have found something real, even if it started wrong, who am I to judge?" Daniel looked stunned. Rachel felt tears streaming down her face. "Are you saying?" Daniel began. "I'm saying I won't expose you," his mother said. "I'm saying maybe I've been wrong to interfere. I'm saying if you love her, truly love her, then you have my blessing." Mrs. Hayes stood up and, to everyone's shock, walked over and embraced Rachel. "Welcome to the family," she whispered, "for real this time." That night, Daniel and Rachel sat in their penthouse, still processing everything that had happened. "I can't believe your mother came around," Rachel said. "Neither can I," Daniel admitted. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "I have something for you." He left the room and came back with papers, the contract. "This has caused us enough trouble," Daniel said. He walked to the fireplace and without ceremony tossed the contract into the flames. They watched it burn together, all those clauses and rules and restrictions turning to ash. "There," Daniel said, "now we can start fresh." "What about the money?" Rachel asked. "You promised to pay off my mother's bills." "Already done," Daniel said. "All of it. And before you protest, that was never about the contract. That was about helping someone I care about." Rachel felt overwhelmed. "Daniel, that's too much." "It's not enough," he said firmly. He took her hands. "Rachel, I know we've been doing everything backwards. Fake marriage first, real feelings later, but I want to do this right." He got down on one knee. Rachel's breath caught. "What are you doing?" "Something I should have done months ago," Daniel said. He pulled out a small box. Inside was a simple, beautiful diamond ring. The other ring was part of the costume. This one is real. His eyes met hers, and they were full of emotion. "Rachel Turner, you walked into my life and turned everything upside down. You taught me how to laugh again, how to feel again, how to love. I don't want a contract with you. I don't want a business arrangement. I want a real marriage, a real partnership, a real life together." Tears poured down Rachel's face. "Will you marry me?" Daniel asked. "For real this time?" "Yes," Rachel sobbed, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, yes, yes." Daniel slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. He stood up and pulled her into his arms, kissing her deeply. When they finally pulled apart, Rachel looked at the ring through her tears. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now," Daniel said, smiling that real smile she loved, "we live happily ever after. No pretending, no performance, just us." "Just us," Rachel repeated and kissed him again. And as the contract burned to nothing in the fireplace, their real story finally began. Closing. Sometimes love finds you in the strangest places. For Rachel and Daniel, it found them in a fake marriage with impossible rules. But love doesn't follow rules. It doesn't care about contracts or clauses or careful plans. Real love finds a way. If you loved this story, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next one. Leave a comment telling me what you thought. Would you have taken Daniel's deal? Could you have kept your heart safe? Share this video with someone who loves a good love story. Until next time, remember that sometimes the best things in life are the ones you never planned for. See you in the next story.